meeting of this semester. So glad that all of y'all could join us for another semester. Just a few reminders before we get started. Please turn your cameras on, just so it's a little bit more like we're in person, a little bit more formal, and just to show respect to our guest speaker. And after our speaker, again, if you have any questions, feel free to ask. And then we'll be going over some really important announcements. So please do not leave. And we also have to take attendance, and that will be at the end of the PowerPoint, the QR code that you're gonna have to scan. So do not exit the meeting before then, because I want y'all to get attendance, because it is a requirement. So without further ado, our guest speaker for today is Dr. Nick Leonards. He is an emergency medicine specialist, and I will now turn the meeting over to him.
Hey everybody, I'm Nick Leonards. I'm an ER doctor at Lafayette General main campus, or Ochsner Lafayette General main campus. The assistant medical director there. I've been there for about 8 years. And Taylor had asked me to do a little presentation of kind of about my path to getting where I'm at. And so I'm going to go ahead and share my screen. And I kind of prepared a little bit of a presentation for you guys. Can you see it?
Yep. Yes, sir.
Good, good. Okay. So, this is just a presentation. I'm going to try to keep it somewhat general. It's kind of hard to do that because I have been doing this for 8 years and I can't speak to other specialties, but I'll try to keep it somewhat general and somewhat relevant to what you guys know. And the first thing that I'd like to go over with that is just kind of just a general overview that the obstacle is the path. I know a lot of you guys were talking, before the meeting about the MCAT and kind of getting to that hurdle and how that determines so much of the rest of your life. And then, after you jump that hurdle, it's going to be medical school and finishing medical school. And then it's going to be getting into residency, and it's going to be finding a job. And there's really no end point in your professional career where you're going to have made it. So you have to warm up to this idea that the obstacle is the path, that you need to, take this moment in your life and view it as a step in your career, and use this time to learn about yourself and really cultivate a genuine curiosity about yourself and the world and the people around you, and not just view it as, okay, I just got to get through the MCAT and then move on to the next thing and move on to the next thing and move on to the next thing, because you're never going to get there if that's kind of your worldview. That being said, you're going to have to give due diligence to the skills you're learning in school. Obviously, they're a big part of your future, but you have to take time to develop personally and emotionally, and you're going to have to really try to enjoy the path that you're on, because it is a path. You're never going to quite make it to some magical level where you're on easy street and never have to work again. You have to push forward as a professional. That's part of being a professional, if you want to find it rewarding and learn to enjoy the process. That's what I mean by the obstacle is the path. I was talking to one of the scribes at work, and he said, what other kind of skills do I need to be learning, at this stage? And I thought about that a lot. I said, you should be practice learning some resilience and grit and how to overcome hardships and kind of accept them with some grace. You should definitely take some time to travel, see the world, get different points of view, volunteer in a meaningful way. And by that, I mean, don't just check a box of volunteering for something. Like, pick something that you actually care about, something that would mean something to you to help in that way. Not just, volunteering on a Saturday to say that you did it on a resume. Have an interesting job. I mean, I've worked at a metal fabrication shop, an office runner, beekeeping, Burger King, pulling red rice. I've done a lot of things, and it's given me a lot of perspective. So, having an interesting job is always, a talking point. It gives you, a point of relation to other people. And then try to get some real medical experience. I think that the Scribe program, I know that Taylor, Caroline, Zach, those guys have really enjoyed that. It gives you much more first world experience than anything I could have ever had when I was in college. You get to really see the ins and outs of the profession by doing something like that. So I'd highly encourage anybody to do that. And there's been a lot of scribes in the program that have actually gone on to get into medical school. And I think that they do like that experience. So this is just kind of a schematic of, kind of your path through your career. You can see that you're, down here on the flats right now in undergrad. And that first step is taking the MCAT. And then after you take the MCAT, you got to get into medical school, and you'll have to take what's called the step 1, which is the first licensing exam. And then you'll go to clinicals and you'll take step 2, which is the second licensing exam. And then you'll get into residency through the match. And then after you get into residency, then you're going to have to take your step 3 and then your boards and then your career specialty. So there's a lot of challenges along the road. And, if you fixate on one of them or each one at a time, you're really going to kind of miss some of the best views, And I'm going to go through all these steps. I'm not going to harp too much on undergrad and taking the MCAT and getting into medical school, because I feel like a lot of you guys probably have a pretty good feel for what it takes right now to do that, probably better than I do, being a few years out. So I'm going to try to talk more about what medical school was like and about the match. I think a lot of you guys maybe don't know about the match or only vaguely aware of it, but matching into your specialty is probably a bigger day as a medical professional than getting into medical school. I think, it was a bigger day for me, certainly. And I had kind of an alternate path going through all of this. So, I didn't come from a family that was well connected or, had money or even really anybody in a medical field, going into it. I kind of grew up, and my mom was a school teacher. My dad worked at the post office. I grew up in Crowley, graduated from Notre Dame, went on to McNeese, and had a really good time in school, in college, maybe too good of a time. I was really socially connected, wrote for the school paper, student government, student union board, fraternity, campus development committee. I was on every club you could imagine, and I enjoyed it, my GPA probably suffered a little bit because of it. I still graduated with 3.5, which wasn't great, but it wasn't really good enough to get me into medical school my first try. And that being said, I wouldn't trade it for the world. I had a great time. I made a lot of great friends, had a lot of great experiences, made a lot of life experience. And so I don't regret it at all. But that being said, with a 3.5 GPA, I didn't get into medical school my first try. So, I was kind of faced with either going to graduate school for another 2 years to boost my GPA and my experience, or I just had a friend of mine who's lived in Crowley, and him and his older brother both went to a Caribbean school, and they both got into competitive interventional radiology specialties after going to this Caribbean school. And I said, well, if they could do it, I can do it. And so I applied and I went there. I'm not sure if I can necessarily speak to whether or not Caribbean schools are a good option this time, compared to whenever I went through, but it's gotten harder. So, I would tread with caution, but I ended up going to AUC Medical School, and that's not a Photoshop picture. That's an actual picture of one of the beaches on St. Martin. It's a Caribbean island, half Dutch, half French. And I stayed there for 2 years. You could see my parents had put a little marker on the map where I was for those 2 years. And that's the school on the left, and my notes from one of my first tests in medical school on the right side. So moved away, and it was a tremendous amount of information. When I moved there, it's so much different than the United States. My friend that lived there, I was going there a week or so ahead. My place wasn't ready. And he said, well, you can stay at my place. I'm going to be not going there for a week or so. So he handed me a key and a Post-it note to get on the plane with. I'd never been out of the country before. And it was a little map of how to get to his place. And it was like around a roundabout by this rock, third house down on the right side, on a Post-it note and a key. I said, no, just give me the address and I'll find it. He said, there's no addresses. It's just the third house past the big rock, past the roundabout. And that was a real eye opener to me. I basically sold everything I had, sold my car, and just jumped feet first and landed in another country with a Post-it note and a key and just started over. And that was a really big, growing up experience for me to have to do that. When I got there, the school was great. The education was great. And in the first 2 years of medical school, you're generally going to do mostly classroom work. So, it's classes like you'd recognize: biochemistry, anatomy. There's a cadaver lab. There are about 20 cadavers there that we operated on all that year. Pharmacology, medical ethics, pathology, histology, physiology. It was very similar to the format that you guys might be used to in college. Big classroom, stadium seating basically. And then you take all these classes and tests. And then at the end of those first 2 years, you take what's called the USMLE Step 1. And a lot rides on that exam. It basically determines what kind of residency you're going to get to. And that changed. It used to be a numerical score that you would get for the Step 1, but they've recently made it a pass-fail, which makes it a little bit more difficult if you're going to an alternative school, because you used to be able to use that test as a way to sort of outshine some of the US grads if you did much better on the test than they did. But now they've made it pass-fail, so it makes you less distinguishable. So that's the school I went to. The lecture halls, everything was pretty modern, even though the island, at some parts was kind of primitive. And I enjoyed staying there. It was a beautiful place, and I didn't get to experience as much of it as I would like, but these are some pictures that I had taken on the island, and they're not Photoshopped. The water's really that blue over there. It was just a beautiful place to live, and I enjoyed it. So I stayed there for 2 years and basically did just bookwork, and that's very similar to the format that you would see anywhere you go, where you're going to do classroom work for a couple of years. And then whenever I came back home after those first 2 years of classroom work in St. Martin, I didn't have a car because I had sold it before I left. And so I was, it was time to study for the Step 1. And I knew that a lot was riding on this test. So every day, I moved back to the United States and I stayed with my parents while I was studying. And my dad would go to work at the post office and he'd drop me off at the Crowley library. And from 8 o'clock in the morning till 5 o'clock at night, I would stay there. It's the most boring place in the world. They don't have a TV. It's just, I was stuck there. I had no vehicle. I couldn't leave if I wanted to. And so I spent many, many, many days just sitting at a desk in the Crowley library doing practice questions over and over again. So I took the MCAT, got into med school and studied for my Step 1. I did very well on my Step 1. I did very well in the classroom portion. And then I started clinicals. And so after your first 2 years of classroom work, you go on to do clinicals. And clinicals is where you're going to be working in a hospital, essentially. And most of the rotations are fairly standard. You're going to do 12 weeks of internal medicine. You're going to do 12 weeks of surgery and surgery specialties. You're going to do 6 weeks of OBGYN, 6 weeks of pediatrics, 4 weeks of neurology, 4 weeks of psych, 4 weeks of ER. And then, at some point you start to get a feel for what you want to do if you didn't already, or maybe you thought you really wanted to do something. I thought I would have liked neurology. And then I did my neurology rotation and I hated it. I completely hated it. And I thought the same thing about pediatrics. I said, well, I'd like pediatrics. What can be better than, dealing with happy kids all day? And it was awful. I couldn't stand, sitting in an office and just dealing with like one kid after another for the same exact thing, like 40 times in a day, and then going home and then coming back and then doing it the same way. Some people love it. I couldn't stand it. And so I actually kind of got scared towards the end of some of my rotations. I was wondering, okay, the things that I thought I liked, I don't. What am I going to like? And I started to kind of get worried. And then what you find is kind of the specialty picks you, and I'll kind of go into that a little bit. So you did your two years of classroom work. You took your step one. You did as good as you could to try to get a good score for make you an attractive residency candidate. Then you do your 2 years in the hospital. You do some away electives, and you go to, say, LSU Shreveport or LSU New Orleans and do some ER rotations to try to impress those people. Show up early, stay late, and you want them to like you because you want them to give you a chance at a residency. So you kind of audition doing some of these rotations, and you have some freedom in your schedule to do that. And then after you're done with your clinical rotations, you go on, you take step two, which is very similar to step one. Step one, I think, was probably the hardest test I've ever taken in my life. Not to scare you, it's probably harder than the MCAT. Step two is just like step one. Step one's a lot of science-based. It's a lot like MCAT, but more life sciences. And then step two is just like step one. It's about 300 questions, 9 hours. And, but it's more how it applies to human sciences or human medicine. And step one is very important score-wise. Step two is more, just don't screw it up. If you got a good score on step one, just don't completely screw up on step two, and you're probably okay. And then the step two used to be broken up into 2 parts, and it no longer is. It used to be about a 300 question, 9-hour test. And then there was that was the clinical knowledge part. They call that CK. And then there was a clinical skills part where you had to actually go to this place, and they had like 7 or 8 actors, and they would act like patients in fake exam rooms. And there was somebody on the other side of a double-sided mirror, and you had to go in and wash your hands and introduce yourself and do the proper exam and ask the proper questions, and somebody would grade you on your interaction with patients. And they don't do that anymore, but it was kind of interesting that you had to go through a full day of basically pretending to be a doctor with actors, and they were grading you on that. But I'm glad they don't do that anymore. So whenever I got ready to go, I passed my step one, and then it was time to go to clinicals from Crowley, and I'd already sold all my stuff. So everything I owned fit in the trunk, so that's the trunk of my car with everything that I've owned in my entire life. That's what I narrowed it down to. And the new car I bought. And then I set out by myself in my car, again, just like with the Post-it note and the key, and drove 1,500 miles to New York. And that was a long trip. It was about 1,500 miles. And that's a long time to listen to talk radio in your car by yourself. So, I drove and drove and drove and drove until, I crossed the Delaware. That's the Delaware River on the right, where that famous painting of Washington crossing the Delaware. That's pretty near where he actually crossed. Until I finally made it to New York at like midnight on a weeknight. And after driving for 2 days straight through all this countryside, it was very weird to drive for 2 days straight alone and then end up just in the midst of all these skyscrapers and Grand Central Station and the Chrysler Building and look up at all of this. And it was funny, my grandpa, who passed away a few years ago, had actually bought me, this is before, smartphones with GPS, and I actually had the old school GPS thing sticking in my windshield. I don't know how anybody would have made that drive without that. So that was good on my 90-something-year-old grandpa to get me that. And so I finally made it to Long Island, which is on the other side of Manhattan. You have to drive through Manhattan to get to Long Island, which is about 45 minutes outside of New York. And believe it or not, so it's like a 2-bedroom house. And even back in 2000, I think it's like 2008, this would have been about a $400,000 or $500,000 house in Long Island. And so it's very expensive to live out there. So what a lot of people end up doing is they finish out their attic or they finish out their basement to rent to somebody so that it helps with their mortgage payment. And so this is a Colombian family that lived near the hospital that I was going to work at, and they had finished out their attic, and I found them online. And I ended up living there. So after driving for 2 days, I just go knock on these people's door that I'd never met before, and and started living in their attic, which was a strange experience. So I drove 2 days, knock on these strangers' door, go put my stuff down in their attic, and then I just wake up the next morning on an air mattress, above someone's house. And this is all I had to my name. I had an air mattress and my TV and an ice chest. And, it was just like starting all over again with the key and the Post-it note. So, again, having, some resilience and grit, and also, just acknowledging that, this is not a glamorous sort of existence. It's, you just got to enjoy this process. So this is after I spruced it up a little bit. And this was the hospital that I started at. This is in Nassau County. This is Nassau University Medical Center. It's about a 20-story hospital. It's this big sprawling campus. They had tons of residencies there, some fellowships. Very, very big place, and it serves a very large area in Nassau County. And from the top floors of this hospital, you can actually see the New York skyline, even though it's about 45 minutes away by rail. You can still see the landmarks in the New York skyline. So it was a great place to live, and it was a great place to stay for the 2 years I was there, and I do miss it. Just 30 minutes away, there's lighthouses and beaches and boardwalks and just beautiful scenery. Sagamore Hill, which is Teddy Roosevelt's house, is just down the road, and then 45 minutes by train to Manhattan. So these are some pictures that I took while I was there. I used to be kind of big into photography, but it was great. It was a great experience. So, at this point, I'm in clinicals in Nassau, in New York, about 45 minutes outside of Manhattan. And I go through my clinicals, and it's, we're starting to get towards where I'm having to pick what specialty I want to go into, and that's called the match. And I'll kind of explain how that works. It's, you decide what specialty you want to go into, and you try to go and do some audition rotations at some of these places. If you really want to go to LSU Shreveport and you want emergency medicine, you should definitely go and spend 4 weeks doing emergency medicine at LSU Shreveport, which I did. And I went to, several other places once I decided that I wanted to do emergency medicine. And then you start going on all these interviews, and that's a very time-consuming, expensive part of the process, because you really want to go on about 10 interviews. And so I went to interviews in Ohio, New York, Florida, Louisiana, Mississippi. And so you're having to fly to all these places. So you can imagine, round trip flights, 10 in a year at least, hotel stays and everything else. It gets very time consuming and expensive, but you want to give yourself the best chance at finding a residency, because what you'll eventually do is you'll come up with a list of residencies that you want, and you'll say, okay, well, I want to rank LSU Shreveport number 1, LSU Baton Rouge number 2, LSU New Orleans number 3, Mississippi number 4, and you come up with this list. And then all these programs that have interviewed applicants also come up with their list. They've interviewed, probably 5 people for every residency spot that they have. And so they make a list of names. We want this guy first, this guy second, this guy third. And then it all goes into a computer system, and the computer decides where you're going to spend the next 3 to 5 years of your life. And it's a big surprise. So you have to come up with this list. And it's interesting. I don't know how many of you guys are Harry Potter fans, but it's a lot like the Sorting Hat, where they basically put a hat on you, and it decides where you're going to go. And so when you match, there's match day, and this is really probably more exciting than getting into medical school. The computer knows who's matched, and you'll get an email or a letter that says you've matched into a program, so you know that you have a residency, and that's great. But they don't tell you until match day what specialty and where you're going to go. And it's in front of all your peers. You have kind of this party, and you get an envelope, and they tell you, like, okay, well, you're going to be going to LSU Baton Rouge, for 3 years for emergency medicine, and everybody claps for you and all that sort of stuff. So it's good. That is probably the most relieved you're ever gonna feel in your career is on match day if you're going into pre-med, because at least at that point you've gotten into the specialty you want, and you're pretty much locked in at that point. So that this is the biggest day for you is match day. And again, it's just like Harry Potter. They put a hat on your head and they tell you where you're going to go. What house you're going to. When you start talking about the competitiveness of different specialties, one of the scribes had asked me about this. Probably your most competitive specialties are going to be like dermatology, ENT, orthopedics, interventional radiology, ophthalmology. Those are very competitive residencies. Kind of like, mid-tier would be surgery, anesthesia, ER, OBGYN, and some internal medicine programs. Internal medicine can range from extremely competitive to not competitive, just depending on where it's at and how much research they have going on at a particular hospital and that sort of stuff. And then kind of the less competitive residencies would be like psychiatry, pathology, family medicine, and pediatrics. Not that some really smart people don't go into those specialties. It's just that the number of spots they have compared to the number of applicants and all that sort of stuff. Really some of the smartest people I've ever met have been pediatric and family medicine docs, but they are a little bit easier to get into by and large. When you're talking about competitiveness, you can see here on the graph, like the number of applicants per position for the different specialties. You can kind of work your way down, and it ends up being a pretty similar list to what I just described. The more competitive ones: orthopedics, plastics, neurosurgery, rad-onc, dermatology. Mid-tier, internal medicine, emergency medicine, you can see there. And then you can see the mean step score. Now this is like data from 2017, so this is back whenever they used to have an actual score. It wasn't pass fail, but you can see like dermatology is just huge. You have to almost get a perfect score. And then down the line, you could see different specialties. It used to be about a 220, 230. You could get into most residencies. And if you got a 240 or above, you could just do whatever you wanted. Somebody had asked me about loans and salary. Typically, whenever you get out into residency and you start, you're going to make about $50,000 or $60,000 a year right now. Your typical student loans are going to be $300,000, give or take, depending on where you go. And that seems like a big number, and it was a huge number. My parents wouldn't even co-sign for my student loans, but you will be able to pay it off whenever you get out. If you look at, if you just Google, any particular specialty salary, I could tell you it's geographic. So they average the entire United States whenever they're taking into account these numbers. Places like Austin, Texas, or Denver, Seattle, or New York, typically physician salaries are lower. So you got to factor that in. But if you look up the averages, typically around here in the South or in the Midwest, the salaries will be higher than whatever you get on Google by a pretty good bit. So you'll be able to pay this off. I mean, you're going to be, up to your nose in debt when you get out, but as long as you, stay humble and live within your means, it's not going to be a problem. This is one thing that I learned really late in it, and I'm just going to share this with you just as a warning. Whenever I took out loans, the first loan I took out was at 9.8% interest, and I didn't think that was that much. I thought that was, well, that's like sales tax, right? I didn't really think about it too much. It was a private loan, which is a high interest rate. And it was my first semester, and I was kind of scared to not have enough money. And I probably shouldn't have taken out that loan, but I did because I was afraid of running out of money that first year. And so I took out $31,000 for that loan at 9.8% interest. And I just deferred the payments because during medical school, obviously, I'm not going to be able to repay it. So that was 4 years. And then 3 years, I deferred it during residency because I was making probably $50,000 a year. And my wife wasn't working, and I had a kid. So I didn't have money to spare to even make payments. And so whenever I was finally out of residency, so 7 years on, after I took out that loan, I called Sally Mae and I said, hey, how much is that $31,000 loan? And they said, it's $62,000, sir. And I said, there's no way that that can be $62,000 because it was only 9.8% interest. And she said, yes, but it's compounding interest. So I got out the calculator. I did, 0.098 times 31, and then took whatever I got and added that to the 31, and then 9.8% times that new number, and then just did that 7 times. And I said, holy cow, like, that's correct. I actually, and that was just one of my loans. That wasn't even like all of them. And I was getting something, it was like something like $15 a day in interest at that point. Now, all that to say, if someone would have told me, or if I would have listened, maybe, if I would have gotten on an income-based repayment schedule, I would have owed something like $40 or $50 a month during residency, which, I could have used $40 or $50 a month sometimes, but if I would have paid $40 or $50 a month and made some effort to repay, that interest wouldn't have kept accruing. That was part of the deal. So I would have probably saved myself $30,000 just right there by just being an income-based repayment. So, when you guys are going through this process and you're taking out student loans, inquire about that. Don't make the mistake I did, because, that was a decent used car, or decent new car probably. So why did I pick emergency medicine? There's a tremendous amount of variety. I established, like, looking at, pediatric clinic. I didn't want to do that all day. It was the same, runny nose, check their ears, check their vaccination schedule all day. I like a job where I can treat a heart attack, a stroke, a stabbing, an asthma attack, a rectal foreign body, all within 2 hours, and be really good at all of those things. And jump from one thing to the next and not really linger. And you see some really interesting things. I mean, the things that you're going to see in the emergency room are not like any other specialty. You're going to see some really interesting, bizarre things. And frankly, that's fun. The other thing I like about it is that I can use my hands and my brain. I really have to think about things. I have to be able to read an EKG. I have to be able to understand some pathology. But I also get to put in chest tubes and intubate people and suture people up and use my hands and set a broken bone and really do some physical things in there. It's got the best stories. I don't have to dress up for work. I get to wear pajamas to work, and I get to ride in helicopters occasionally. And, whenever they told me that, I said, I'm sold. But the thing that really kind of sealed it in my mind, like I was saying, I was kind of going through an existential crisis during my second 2 years when I was doing my rotations, and I realized that the things I thought I wanted to do, I didn't really like that much. And I was really worried that maybe I'd just picked the wrong path in life altogether. And, I started my ER rotation in Nassau County, and I went down to the emergency room, and it was complete chaos. Like, there were people like screaming, there's people on stretchers, like, somebody spilled a urine container. It was just complete chaos in there. And it was exciting. Like, it was something that was just, just kind of like lit up. I was like, man, this is like insane. Like, and they had this doctor there, and I don't know where he was from, but he was like the smartest guy I've ever met. A patient needed an NG tube, a tube that goes through your nose into your stomach, because he had to pump a guy's stomach. So he went and put that in. And then another person had a GI bleed. They had a stomach ulcer that was bleeding. And what you do is you put some stool on this little card, and then you have this developer, these little drops that you drop onto the card, and it turns blue if they have a GI bleed. Well, they were out of the developer. So he said, no problem, I'll make my own. So he went and got some alcohol, and he got some hydrogen peroxide, and he mixed it in the right ratio, and then dripped it on the card, and it was positive. He said, okay, this guy's got a GI bleed. And he started treating that and got the patient admitted. And then he got his calipers out, these little, almost looks like an old school compass. And he's looking at the EKG, and he's marching it out. And he's like, okay, this person has AFib. We need to call cardiology. I'm like, man, this guy can handle anything that life throws at him. Even when he doesn't have the equipment he needs, he just makes it up. Like he can just make out of his environment whatever he needs to make and handle any situation that comes along. And I was just so blown away by that. It was so not cookie cutter medicine. It was so thinking on your feet, and it was so using your hands, that I was like, this is it. This is exactly what I want to do. So that was just the moment that the light bulb went off for me. It wasn't what I was expecting, but it's been everything I hoped for. And that all kind of came to fruition. I mean, I still do this in clinical practice. When we were working at the PMAC at LSU during a hurricane, there was a bunch of evacuees that came in for the hurricane, and they have a generator at the PMAC at LSU and the Pete Maravich Assembly Center. And so most of the people that were there that were refugees, there were people that needed electricity, and they needed reliable electricity. People have LVADs, which is like a mechanical propeller to circulate your blood, and they have to have a battery pack. Therefore, they have to have constant electricity, to charge up their batteries. Or people that were on oxygen, and so they needed oxygen concentrators to deliver oxygen. And so you just had these rows of people sleeping on the floor, and just all needing electricity, or some of them just needed a place to stay. And a lot of the people with oxygen started to complain, because if you just have non-humidified oxygen in your nose, it starts to dry your nose out. And so, of course, we had the oxygen concentrators, but didn't have any of the humidification bottles. So, I was bored. There wasn't much else to do. You were just kind of sitting there waiting for something to happen. I went and got some saline containers and drilled holes in the tops of them and rigged the tubing to almost work as a bubbler, so the oxygen would go in through the water, bubble up through the saline, and then come out the top and go back into the nasal cannula so they could all have humidified oxygen. And that's kind of the ethos of emergency medicine is you may not have what you need, but if you think hard enough, you're going to figure it out. Even if you have only, a DeWalt drill and some bottles of water, you're going to figure it out. And I really like that philosophy on medicine. So, I went into residency and, graduated with 15 people. These are some of my colleagues that were in residency when we went to Denver for the national conference. And it was a dream come true. It was a great 3 years. I learned a lot. And so you go through those 3 years of residency, and that's all hospital based. You do some didactic lectures, like say on Thursday, you spend your morning doing lectures and teaching and learning, reading about new journal articles and things like that. And then you take your step 3 after or towards the end of your residency. And then once you're done with residency, you go to take your boards. And for emergency medicine, you go to Chicago. So you take your written boards online, but then you go to Chicago for an in-person, how do you say? It's almost like in-person scenarios. You go to a hotel, and there's these old, emergency medicine guys who are basically the gatekeepers of the profession. And you go into a hotel, and they do it in their rooms. So like the same room that they slept in the night before, they set up a desk, and you walk in and you sit across the desk from them. They say, okay, you get a 67-year-old patient comes in complaining of generalized weakness. They've had black tarry stool for a week, and they go on with this scenario, and you have to tell them what you would order, what you expect to find, what do you do once you find it, and kind of go through these verbal scenarios. And you go through about 5 or 6 of those. They don't do that anymore. They've suspended that during COVID, and now you do it on a Skype sort of thing. But that was good. And so this is Chicago on top of the Sears Tower, the Willis Tower. They have this thing where you can step out on the glass and look straight down. I really enjoyed that. So that's sort of the path. You're where you're at now, undergrad. You're gonna have to take the MCAT, and then all the way up through your specialty boards, and that's sort of the path that you're going to take. So just to recap, it's important to do well in school, but don't forget to enjoy the process, because you're never going to reach a point where you've made it and there's no more work and you just get to enjoy it. So just get to enjoy your work. Develop resilience and some grit. Study hard for your board exams, especially the step 1 and step 2, because those are the ones that are going to make or break you for the match. Review your loan repayment options carefully whenever you go to take out those loans, and be smart about it. Don't get discouraged if you don't know what kind of specialty you want to go into, because the specialty is going to pick you, and you're going to be fine, as long as you view your life as a constant state of evolution, and you just learn to enjoy the path that you're on, even the hard parts.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Dr. Leonards. That was an incredible presentation. I thoroughly enjoyed it. So now we're going to open up the floor to anyone with questions. You can either unmute yourself or you can ask them in the chat. I see that Lydia asked, I assume every specialty has some version of this. I'm assuming she's talking about the boards test, and they would all have a specific city you have to go to, question mark.
Oh, that I'm really not sure. I know every specialty is going to be a little bit different. Some of them still have oral boards, some don't. Some are only a test that you take online. But I can't speak to every single specialty about, travel. It's not all in Chicago, though.
Awesome. Austin and Jay and some other people were saying it's one of their favorite presentations ever. So great job.
Thank you.
Camille wants to know, what did you not like about neurology?
If I'm being candid, some people with neurologic problems, or what they think are neurologic problems, actually end up being psychiatric problems. And it can be very hard to distinguish between the two, and frustrating. And so as much as I wanted to like the idea of doing a really good neurologic exam, and that's what I liked about it, is that there's so many little tricks and things that you could do in neurology, flicking their fingers and scraping the bottom of their feet and checking for reflexes and really doing a great physical exam. That's what I liked about it. If someone is just convinced something's wrong with them and they're kind of feigning things, it completely throws all of that off, and it makes it very difficult. And then you just end up frustrated and you order an MRI. And that's basically what I didn't like about it, was just you didn't get to use the skills that you developed as much as I would have liked.
Thank you. Mackenzie wants to know, what's your least favorite part of emergency medicine, and what is your favorite procedure to perform?
The least favorite part is it's probably working nights and weekends. That's a sacrifice that you're gonna have to make, is that you're gonna work nights and weekends guaranteed. You're gonna have to spend some time away from your family. You're gonna spend some days, some really nice days, where you wish you could have done something with your family or friends, but you're gonna be sleeping because you worked the night before. And I think the other thing is, like, you don't get to really develop close relationships with your patients for the most part, because you're only seeing them for a little while. You can, and I do sometimes, look them up later or go visit them on the floor after I've admitted them to see how they did. But you miss that personal connection. And that was something I was worried about whenever I did emergency medicine. But I realized that I have the option to do that if I want. So I still do that. And I think favorite procedure, I don't know. I like reducing dislocated fingers. That's pretty fun. It's very gratifying. The person feels better immediately, and it's quick and easy. And aside from that, probably intubating. I like intubating.
Jason asked, what was the application process like with the Caribbean Medical School?
It was so long ago, I don't really remember. You didn't go through the same application process as you do for US schools. I know that. It was, you applied specifically to that school, and they wanted the MCAT. They did, an interview. It was an over the phone interview. I remember that. And they still wanted all your records. But like I said, with Caribbean schools, you don't have the advantage of having a step 1 score anymore. to set yourself apart. And so I caution people whenever they start telling me that they want to go to a Caribbean school, even that's what I did, and it turned out fine. And it probably still does for a lot of people. I caution people about that, just because it's getting harder and harder to distinguish yourself from, U.S. applicants. And just going to a Caribbean school, they're going to have, kind of one mark against you already by going there.
Thank you. Jada, if you want to ask your question out loud, you can do so now.
Okay. Can you hear me?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. I wanted to ask, is it always in the ER, like, are you always having to be quick on your feet? And have you ever, like, had a moment where it was like an emergency situation and you didn't quite know what to do? And then, like, if that did happen, like, what was, like, the resolution in the situation?
Yeah, I mean, you always have to think quick on your feet. I mean, you always have to have a high degree of suspicion. Anything you see, that toothache might be a heart attack. That indigestion might be a heart attack. That bumped funny bone could be a stroke. You really have to have a high degree of suspicion, because you're walking through a minefield every day. When you go to work, there's people that'll try to downplay their symptoms, and they're really serious. And there's other people that really try to play up their symptoms and they're not serious, but you have to take them seriously. And so there's this whole human element of trying to read people in addition to doing your job and doing the right things medically. And there are tons of situations where you're not going to know what to do. Tons. I'm really well trained in emergencies. I feel like I can handle just about anything. But there are definitely things where you're not quite sure what to do, and you have to go back to your fundamentals, airway, breathing, circulation, okay, make sure the airway is intact, make sure that they've got a heartbeat, that they've got a pulse, and then you work it up from there and you figure it out. And you have people to lean on, especially if you're working at a bigger hospital. You can bounce ideas off of other specialties. Maybe someone's seen that before. So, and they're just a phone call away. And that's one thing I like about medicine is, by and large, almost everybody is very collegial with each other and very willing to help each other out in a pinch. So I have no problem, asking someone else's opinion or help. And so you always have a lot of resources.
Okay, thank you.
Mm-hmm.
All right, we have 2 more questions and then we'll cap it at that just for time purposes. But Tia asked, have you worked with any DOs, and do you notice a difference in the schooling that you had versus what DOs have?
Yeah, no, I've definitely worked with DOs, and I think that their knowledge base is the same as ours. I think they're just as competent. They do the same residencies. I would never think twice about working with a DO. I think that they train great doctors.
And then Jordan asked, does your department offer shadowing possibilities, or is it only scribing?
I think you should become a scribe, Jordan. I think that's a great opportunity. Going through the credentialing process for shadowing, I had a friend of mine who, later in life decided he wanted to go back to school and asked if he could come shadow me. And my first inclination was say, like, yeah, just come with me to work, but there's HIPAA laws and everything else involved in that. And it's maybe back in the day you could do that, but these days they don't just let you have somebody kind of follow you around the hospital. It has to go through, the HR process and the vetting and all that kind of stuff. So there may be a way to shadow, but whenever I tried to do it with him, just a friend of mine who was in college, they wouldn't allow it. They said it had to go through an affiliated school or affiliated program, like the radiology program maybe, but it was a lot of hoops to jump through to do that.
A bunch of us are leaving Scribe Americas because we're like going to school and stuff, and so apply. Can't hurt to apply, and it's great. We have a great time. Dr. Leonards teaches a lot while you work with him, so you learn a bunch. It's really fun.
And you see a lot too. I'm not just trying to plug the whole scribe thing, but I wish an opportunity like that had been present, when I was in college. just to have that experience and see those kinds of things at y'all's age, I think it would have been amazing.
I have a quick question. I know you said last question, but it's really quick. Where did you say you did your residency at?
LSU Baton Rouge.
Okay, gotcha.
Mhm.
Thank you.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much, Dr. Leonards, for coming to talk to us tonight. Yeah, I think I can just speak on behalf of our entire society, and that was absolutely incredible. I feel like you shared so much of your knowledge and life experience with us. It'll be very useful for all of us as we continue our journeys. So thank you again for coming out.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
Yeah, absolutely.
Thank
Hope
you.
you have a great rest of your night.
All right, y'all too. Bye.
Bye. Awesome. And so now we'll continue just with a few announcements. So don't leave yet. All right. So again, you need 12 volunteer hours, just like last semester. The deadline to put these in will be April 29th, which I believe is the last day of classes. Dues are $15 for this semester. If you paid last semester the $25 deal, you do not have to pay the $15 this semester. You can either Venmo us, or you can bring a cash in an envelope or a check in an envelope and put it in Dr. Felgenhauer's box in the front office at BO. And attendance is going to be taken at the end of the meeting, so don't leave yet. And if you ever need to miss a meeting or anything like that, please email Caroline at ullppssecretary@gmail.com. And then Jordan, if you want to talk about volunteer opportunities.
Hey everyone. So our first scheduled opportunity is going to be face painting at the Down Syndrome Association of Acadiana's World Down Syndrome Day Carnival celebration. I am really excited because we were unable to participate in the Buddy Walk, and this is what we do every year for the Buddy Walk. So it's like a way for us to get back involved. And with that, I'm going to have volunteers for that day, but also we have to get the face painting supplies. So as always, with all this information, I'm going to send out an email, but you can either buy supplies and I'll meet up with you at some point to pick those up, or you can volunteer the day of. It's March 20th from 2 to 4 p.m. We are currently planning 2 dates in March to go back to the Second Harvest Food Bank. They're going to be a Tuesday or Friday at 1 to 3 p.m. So I try to choose 2 different days. That way people have multiple opportunities. We still have 2 more preview days. Well, actually it's February school, sorry. March 12th, that's the last preview day. Please email Dr. Sophie if you'd like to be involved with that. And the MDA summer camp is having applications. We've had past members participate as I've been through PPS during the years, and it's a really credible experience. You can get a tremendous amount of hours volunteering this way. And whenever I'm going to send out my email, I will send the link to sign up for that, so you can read up more on what the program is about, how you can get involved, those kinds of things. And so just a quick kind of catch up for you guys. We're going to be redoing our spring fundraiser, which is going to be the raffle again. And this year our money is going to be going towards Healing House, which is a local charity where those children who have experienced a loss are able to go and kind of let out frustration or have therapy. And then their parents at the same time can go have therapy for the loss. It's just a great way. And I know members of our society have been volunteering and said that they are experiencing a loss due to COVID. There's a lot that need help. So yes, we don't have all the details just yet, but I just want to let you guys know so it can kind of start working and turning in your heads. But mostly wanted to give you guys a heads up because any prizes that you guys could get us with connections would be fantastic, because the better the prizes, the more people who will want to donate to our cause. And as always, like I said, just a quick reminder, I will be sending out an email, and if you ever have anything that you want me to add to these opportunities, please let me know and email me. Thank y'all.
Thanks, Jordan. So we'll be having a give back night tomorrow, and it'll be at Grub. So this is just a super duper easy way to get your volunteer hours. So yeah, go to Grub tomorrow, mention PPS at checkout. And so that way we can raise some more money for the Healing House. And yeah, just a reminder that you can only get 3 hours from Get Back Nights. So just be aware of that. But yeah, definitely go and eat some good grub.
Just 1 second. If
Yes.
anyone has suggestions on different restaurants y'all would like to have give back nights at, please email me at the ULL PPS volunteer Gmail, because I would love it for y'all to go to places you actually want to go, if I can make it happen.
Sweet. Thanks, Jada. So future meeting dates. I sent this out in the email this morning, but we will be meeting in person for the next 3 meetings, which we are all super excited about. Because of just like some limitations with like spacing and things like that, we will be in the student union, so it won't be in BO, but we're super excited to be meeting in person again. So these are the dates. These are the rooms in the union where we will be meeting. And again, we'll be sending out reminders as we approach the dates. One general thing that some of you might not be aware of because you've only experienced PPS through Zoom, but in in-person meetings, we do dress professionally. So that means, like pants or just like dress clothes, no jeans. If you are coming from work and you're in scrubs, that would be acceptable, but it's scrubs or dress clothes. And because, yeah, we're the Pre-Professional Society, so we want to dress like it. And one reminder, dues are going to be required by March 23rd. That's our 3rd general meeting. And then we will also be having elections coming up later on in the spring. So if you're thinking about running for the board, it's a great opportunity to grow in leadership and just get more involved in the happenings of PPS. So kind of think about that and reach out to the board members if you have any questions about that. And you can go to our website and add all of our meeting dates to your Google Calendar. So that way it's like already on your calendar, and it has like the where we're meeting like on there. So it'll have all the details for you laid out and it'll be easy to access. Stay connected. So if you're not in a class group me, please email your respective class representative. Follow us on social media because we do post a lot of updates on there. And then Brooklyn, if you want to talk about graduation cards real quick.
Yes. So if y'all are graduating in May, y'all should all be in, or like the seniors, y'all should all be in the group me. So to be eligible for a graduation cord, you have to have been an active member for the past 4 semesters, including this semester. So 4 semesters, which is like 2 years, and then you have to be active the semester you graduate. And then again, an active member means that you've paid your dues and you've gotten your volunteer hours for all of those semesters. So Monique is probably going to send a message in our senior class group me. And if you're a junior and you're graduating early, just email me at the ULL PPS vice president. It's on the website if you're graduating early and you're not in that group me. And then she's probably going to send a message, and then y'all can just like it if y'all are, eligible to get one. So y'all make sure that y'all have met all those requirements before you like those messages, because we're going to go through and make sure that y'all, are eligible to receive one. So if y'all have any questions about that, just email me.
Thanks, Brooklyn. We are still selling t-shirts and masks, and we will be selling them in person at the next meeting. So if you just want to wait until then, that would also work. And let's see, and Doc, did you have anything that you want to say?
The only other thing is scholarships. I met with Adele Boyard today, who's head of scholarships, and I'm meeting with her next Wednesday, a week from today. And turning in the paperwork that goes to the dean, and the scholarships will go into your account within a week or two after I do that. So you may get a check depending on which scholarship, but most of them will go into your account. So that should be happening very soon.
Awesome. Thank you, Doc. Yeah, so that was just for clarity. If you applied for a scholarship last semester, that's what Doc was referring to. So yeah, now if you want to scan this QR code for attendance, it will also be sent in the chat. So you can just click that link as well. But yeah, once you've done that, you're free to go. Thank you all so much for attending our first meeting. I hope you all enjoyed it. Y'all have a good week.
Hey Matt, I have a question.
Yes.
So for the attendance, I tried to click it and it's picking up my hospital email. So I don't know why it's doing that.
Chris, I'll mark you, but like you have to like log out of whatever thing you're in and like go to the university email, because it's like, I don't know, they have rules and regulations like through our Microsoft accounts.
Right. I don't know why it's logged in like that, because that's a secure account. Like
Oh.
I don't, so like it shouldn't be logged in automatically.
I'll mark you as present, Chris. And if anybody else is having trouble with the form, just email me.
I have a quick question. I'm not sure if I paid for both semester or just one semester. How would I find that out?
You can email Ann Christian.
Yeah, just email me and I can check to make sure you're on the list.
Okay. Can I know your email address?
Yeah, it's here. Hold on one second.
I think she's gonna put it in the chat.
And if y'all ever need our emails, they're on the website too. So I always forget about that.
There you go. I'll put it in the chat so you can email me.
Doc, when's your office hours?
Everybody knows that I really don't have office hours. I'm pretty much there all the time. So just email me or come by the office, but I'm always there in the morning early until I teach. So best thing to do is to email me and make an appointment or just stop by.
Awesome. Well, thank you guys for all of your hard work. Please, if you haven't reached out or like filled out that Google form about the businesses you're contacting, do that soonish. But yeah, that's all I have. Doc, do you have anything else for them?
No, look forward to being back to face.
Yes, very excited. Awesome. Well, yeah, I hope you have a good rest of your night.
Be back to having pizza again too. So
yes.
Dr. Leonards did so good. I will.
Oh,
say.
he was great.
I wish I would have asked him before we started the meeting. I didn't realize he was from Crowley and went to Notre Dame. I should have known by Leonards, but
Y'all, Dr. Seymour's cousin.
Yes, he's Dr. Seymour's cousin.
everybody's cousins over here.
Yeah, that's true.
I had no idea.
Yeah.
Yeah, he
I
was.
knew he would do
really
great.
great.
He's amazing. He is one of my favorite doctors to work with. He let me